Okay, so Kazuo Shinohara, born the 2nd of April, 1925, and this is the reason why we talk about him today. As you see, he was born on April 2nd, 1927. He died on July 15th, 2006, so 16 years ago. Was a Japanese architect, Kazuo Shinohara, forming what is now widely known as the Shinohara School, which has been linked to the works of Toyo Ito, Kazunari Sakamoto, and Itsuko Hasekawa. As architectural critic Thomas Daniel put it, a key figure who explicitly rejected Western influences, yet appears on almost every branch of the family tree of contemporary Japanese architecture. Is Kazuo Shinohara. His effects on the discipline as a theorist, designer, and teacher have been immense. He studied at Tokyo Institute of Technology, TIT, finishing in 1953 and going on to become professor in 1970. He established his own practice in 1954, going on to design more than 30 residential buildings, as well as many key public buildings across Japan. His work is generally classified as having strong qualities of lucidity and ephemerality, and for these reasons, he is often seen as ideologically influential on Toyo Ito's work. Toyo Ito, who is Japanese, but was born in, I think either was born in Korea or from Korean parents. He was awarded the Architectural Institute of Japan's AIJ Grand Prize in 2005, and in 2010, the Biennale di Venezia awarded a special commemorative Golden Lion in memory of Kazuo Shinohara. This was the man. So he died in 2006, and his architecture is could be a little bit enigmatic for me, at least, or maybe for a Westerner in general, but quite an interesting figure in the landscape of Japanese architecture. Now, what do we see here? We see the architect, and we see, game in front of him, kind of a Lego. And, you would say the architect is too serious to indulge in playing like a kid, but it is not so. If you do not play, you cannot truly create. You have to work and play, play and work. And so I like this picture very much, because you see a man with a tie, with a white shirt, a professor, and so on, with a rather, intellectual and even, serious face, almost austere face. But in front of him is an architecture of play, or playing, so to speak. Anyway, I think this is a subject worth reflecting on. Could we create without playing? Could we create without being childlike? I doubt it. Even Brancusi said it: when we are not children any longer, we are dead. And it's true. Kugayama House from 1954. So he opened his office in 1954. He finished his studies in 1953, and 1 year later, he opened his office. This is still a house, which relates to the tradition of Japan. Is not yet as experimental as he was able to be later on. But so did Kenzo Tange, his own house, which has some similarity with this house. Both architects started with an architecture without anything really outrageously innovative. We remember yesterday we talked about Kiyonori Kikutaki. Kikutake, well, Kikutake built the Sky House, which was, you know, more, in a way, more provocative, architecturally speaking, than the house by either Kento Tange or Kazuo Shinohara. But even here we see the, you know, the larger body of the house elevated from the earth. (1954). So the ground floor is on the top and the second floor at the bottom. Interesting plan in a way, because on the ground floor is the kitchen with the eating area. So you enter actually the house through the kitchen. And I think it's fine. It's perfectly fine. Although, you know, conventional thinking in architecture would discourage something like this. But I think it's perfectly fine. And this larger kitchen with the eating area functions also as some kind of a second, you know, living room. And the larger living room is on the top, from where you enter the bedroom and the tatami room and the bathroom. It's okay. No corridors, and it works. Kazuo Shinohara, 1954. Umbrella House, 1961. And umbrella it is. You know, the structure of the roof is the most architectural element in the house. And there are beautiful pictures about it. As you can see, the building is still, you know, alive, so to speak. By the way, where you see this bluish sign on the lower right corner of the picture and the name offhouses.com, this is a very useful and serious website created by a Romanian architect who lives and works in Suceava. Offhouses.com is an excellent website which shows houses from all over the world, you know, modern houses. Here again is taken from the same website. So this house by Kazuo Shinohara stirred up the interest of the architect who takes care of, who created this website of houses. I like very much this. I mean, look, the roof, the ceiling is in the simplicity of the house is actually the catalyst for imagination. This in its structure. It's pure structure, but it's more than structure. It's more than just structure. It becomes the ceiling and the roof becomes eloquent aesthetically as well. And in a way, you know, any house, you know, it is an umbrella. A house is an umbrella with the walls around you, but because of the roof, and I read that in Japan, the roof is crucial, that even in traditional Japanese architecture, the roof has a central role, a significant role, architecturally speaking. And here we see this statement paradigmatically expressed. It's a very simple house. It's a small house, but again, no corridors. You know, no. It's. And I wonder if a civilized country like Japan can get rid of, you know, entrance hall and all those doors and doors and doors, and why can't we? Not to speak about this type of, you know, ladder, which is totally discouraged in our country, but you know, we prefer to build something heavy in concrete and so on. Why? Why? It can be done in this way, ephemerally, still functioning quite well. It's the quintessential home. That's what it is. The Umbrella House by Kazuo Shinohara. It's simple, but not simplistic. It's refined. It's eloquent. It's mysterious even. The Umbrella House. We see again the entrance into the house through the kitchen and the eating area. Perfectly fine. I actually grew up in a building in Sibiu, rather old, where out of 13 apartments, at least half of them had the entrance into them in the same way, through the kitchen. It's okay. It's fine. House with an earthen floor. This is very interesting. So it has an earthen floor within the house, inside the house. Rural Japan is you know, not very different in its essence from rural Romania, actually. And you know, we only have now images of pristine Japanese design and interiors, no disorder whatsoever. It's not so. I mean, you see here, you know, a lot of disorder is the disorder of life. It's okay. So interesting, these lamps, which are, you know, very close to the floor. Of course, the Japanese, you know, like to sit directly on the floor with some pillows, but it creates a different feeling in the house. Well, it is said that justifiably so that Japan has a lot of knowledge and traditional knowledge as well about working with wood, with timber. And you know, this tradition evolved in time, and even in the present, there is a lot of you know, a lot of significant work in architecture done with wood, with timber. Like Kengo Kuma would be inconceivable without wood. Paradoxically, Tadao Ando, who is the master of concrete, he actually lives in a wooden house, made totally of wood, completely of wood, the house that belonged to his parents, and that's where he lives. So the master of concrete lives in a wooden house. North House in Hanayama, 1965. You see again that the silhouette of the buildings, of the residential buildings by Kazuo Shinohara is very traditional, you know, with a sloping roof, and it's I don't think he modifies significantly the conception of a house that was applied to reality in all the times. Maybe the interior sometimes has a certain drama, and we are going to arrive at such houses, as opposed to the typical traditional house. The house in white, 1966. From the outside, you would say, well, you know, it's just another house, like many other houses. Where is the innovation? I'm sure there are innovations. For someone who knows more in depth the architecture of Japan, these differences between what was in the past and what is in the present, or in the present of Kazuo Shinohara, would be more easily decipherable. He does employ often structural elements within the house in rather unexpected and even sculptural ways. Here is just a pole, but we'll see later some very interesting things. This is also interesting how this, you know, collector of the rainwater is actually bringing the water inside. Very unusual, but it's an idea, you know, to, especially at a time when we talk about harvesting rainwater, instead of, you know, directing the water to the earth, to maybe put it to some use inside the house. It's an interesting possibility. Also interesting is, you know, this entrance here in this room. I don't know if the entrance into the house is through here, but I like it very much. You know, if it is the entrance into the house or the exit towards the garden, both ways, I think it's very simple and poetical, although some might say, you know, the most not the most comfortable way, but I don't know. It creates a moment of you are forced to be attentive, and you should be attentive at the at the threshold between the outside and the inside. So I like very much what I see here, although the functionalist, I'm sure, would protest. Another house of worth, well, he employed, previously, I thought it was about a different house. We are going to arrive at it, where there is actually the floor is the natural earth, and it's not even flat. In this case, is the bedroom is underground, as you can see in the section. So, you know, it's a small house with a stair that goes underground, and that's where the bedroom is, without a window. It's just, you know, this space underneath the earth, underground. Very interesting. Now, the atmosphere inside the house is affected by lots of things. When you see such an interior, you wouldn't think it's Japan, because, you know, garn is the, you know, the the simplicity of the interior. Here, maybe someone who loves to collect lift or leaves. I don't know, but the house was built by Kazuo Shinohara, and whoever lives there is something else. This is the stair that goes underground to that bedroom. Again, a very simple entrance into. Let's actually look at the plans again. Yeah, the entrance is through here. Through here, I think. Let's look again, but it seems to be very unusual compared to the, the paraphernalia of protections that we are so accustomed to, These are not rich houses. They're not. And actually, Japan, although it's a very industrialized and well-to-do country is, many of the streets in Tokyo have very modest buildings on both sides. So there is a certain rurality in this very sophisticated and urbanized country. On the other hand, you wonder, bedroom underground without any window, how would it be? I know that traditionally in old houses in Japan, there were cases, and maybe frequent cases, where actually the sleeping area, the bed itself, was inside the closet. So you would open the sliding door of the closet and there was the bed. So they didn't have a specialized room for the bedroom. It was a large space, and on one side, against one wall, there were these a little bit wider closets with sliding doors, and usually a twin-size bed was on the second floor, and underneath storage space for the bed equipment, so to speak. Very efficient, and I think it works. Uncompleted house, 1970. Interesting name. In what way is uncompleted? This is a larger building. Interesting also, the presence of two stairs here, because a more conventional architect would have done just one stair and then a corridor, and with access in the same places to the rooms, but he created two stairs. I don't know why the house is called incomplete or incomplete. Kazuo Shinohara. Prism House, 1974. He designed also public buildings, and we are going to see a few. But he also designed, we read at the beginning, about 30 residential building houses. This is very interesting. Look at the sections through the house. Indeed, it is so-called logical. The plans are above. So in section is a, a triangle. It is indeed a prismatic house, a prism, and the purity of the structure is expressed accordingly. I know an architect who usually the architect starts a project with a plan, but an architect like Massimiliano Fuchsas, an important contemporary architect, he starts with a section. And it is possible, even though there are reasons to say we start with a plan because at the level of the plan, the human functions take place. And it's a legitimate choice, but it's also possible to start, as I said, like Fuchsas, with a section, or even in some other ways. Tanikawa House, 1974. Now we see the geometrical trees of structure within the house. And here is, you see the flooring is actually the sloping earth, left with the earth. I don't know exactly what function he has here. We see a hammock, hanging there between two poles. This is how to say, an archetypal house. Is primordial, is simple, is archaic, is reduced to a minimum. Again, I think it is a specific function that is supposed to take place here. It's not a typical house in this part of the house, but architecturally striking in its simplicity. You see, he simply allowed the sloping land to go through the house. Not all the house, though, is like this. There's this space, but which is rather large. So I don't know where the interest into the house is. The big space with a sloping land within the house is probably here. And the more conventional, so to speak, the typical, the normal house is here. But what is this space? This is a very interesting idea, to allow the natural slope of the land, of the earth, to remain the same within the house. So when I look at these buildings, it seems it is possible to make unconventional statements respecting the traditional paradigm with a sloping roof. At the first sight, you would say this is, is a house as we have seen many. But then if you look more carefully, you discover things that are very unusual. So it's possible to use, common ways of building and still create unexpected, spaces and even functions. I remember what Gaston Bachelard said, something that haunts me almost. He said that the mollusk doesn't build a house, its house, in order to live in, but lives in order to build its house. So the house is at the end of the journey called life. But for us humans, very often, if not always, is the opposite. We quickly build a house in order to live in or to move in, to have the grand opening, the quickly move in. But the house does not represent, is not a proper portrait of our biography, it's not the expression of a lived house, of a lived life. So maybe there is something to learn from the mollusk, where the house, the building, becomes the culmination of a lived life and not just a tool to quickly use in order to live under its umbrella, referring to the umbrella house by Kazuo Shinohara. I think it's something worth reflecting about, the mollusk and us. What if indeed a human life culminates in the house, in the building that expresses that lived life of someone? I always ask myself, what does the Falling Water building by Frank Lloyd Wright, what does it say about the Kaufman family? Who lived there? Who commissioned the building and who lived there? Nothing, except that we know they commissioned Mr. Frank Lloyd Wright. What does Villa Savoie by Le Corbusier say about the Savoie family? Nothing. It says something about the beliefs, the conceptions of Le Corbusier, but nothing about the people who lived in, except again that they commissioned Le Corbusier. But what if we conceive of a house which narrates the life of those who live there, not the life of the architect? it's almost I mean, strange, no, that the house where someone lives doesn't say almost anything, doesn't say anything about who that one is, except through furnishings and you know, acquisitions and so on. I think in a certain way, the mollusk is wiser and more complex and more philosophical. My question is, how could we build a narrative architecture? An architecture that tells the story of those people who use the building and live there, as opposed to, at the most, saying something about the architect who built it, but who doesn't live there. At a superficial reading, so to speak, this building looks like a banal building, but it's not a banal building, and so it's rather it's quite unusual because of this large space here, which allows the land, the sloping land, to go through it, through the house. And look at these windows, you know, very low and very small windows. They remind me of the windows of my grandmother's house, a very modest house in a village near Sibiu. Now that I think about it, Bernard Tschumi built in New York, in the campus of Columbia University, built a student center where there is such a sloping, long area, and there are tables there, which, you know, if they follow the sloping flooring, would not have been horizontal, and that's why they have on one side the legs are longer, taller than on the other side. You know, discomfort, you know, it's not just because of Neufeld. It is this obsession with comfort, but I think discomfort is a dimension of life which is not totally to be ignored. I mean, it's even beneficial existentially, a certain level of discomfort. So I once launched a competition, the House of Oxymorons, and an architect from the United States sent me a project called the House of, well, it was in essence the House of Discomfort, but he called it differently, the House of, not inadequacy. It was in essence, yes, the House of Discomfort. Here we see discomfort because the sloping land remains sloping within the house as well. And I think we should talk about these matters. Should a house be just, you know, a locus where comfort is everything that matters? I mean, I'm not sure that life is to be reducible to what we call comfort. I mean, I'm not a masochist, but I think life is too complex to be reduced to such rather banal desideratum, no, comfort and comfort again. What kind of a comfort is in this room? But it's very possible that in this room, although it doesn't allow for a conventional usage, you can invent, you know, scenarios that could be very uplifting even. I mean, you see the hammock here. You know, imagine you laying on this hammock between these two poles, tree-like, geometrical as they are, and dream. Yes, dream. You say, do I need such a big space for dreaming? Yes, you do. What's wrong with dreaming? And why should dreaming to take place in a closet or a very small space? It could be done in that way as well. What I'm trying to say is, I think the obsession with function and comfort reduces a lot the adventure of life to banalities, a sum of banalities, really. Would I like to have such a room? I would say yes, I would. I would. Because inside this room, although it protects me from the rain and so on, I would feel closer to the earth. I would. You see here, you sit, here, and you look at the trees, look at the environment. You look. I don't know. I think you feel less strange than in the case of this space was populated with TV and all the objects that we are so accustomed to. This is about something else. And that's where architecture becomes poetry. And I think very rarely, unfortunately, obsessed as we are by petit bourgeois concerns, we allow poetry to manifest itself in architecture. Here there is poetry. Now, again, I don't think this kind of house can be built for anyone. No, I don't know who lives here. I don't know who commissioned it, but I'm curious, and it's very feasible. Also, it's not, it's not an expensive house. It's not a big house. Interesting house, Kazuo Shinohara. Now another house from 1976. This is, I began like this because that's how the picture was downloaded at first. On the left is a house which is not his and is, just another house. But the house he built, Kazuo Shinohara, is unique. This is the house. And it's not a big house, but it's special. And we'll see inside a lot of uncomfortable elements. If I am to be, trying to be a little bit humorous. I love this tree in front of the house, and it's exactly what is needed, because otherwise the house is rather morose and grayish and, could be even depressing. But look what's going on inside. Look at these structural trees, which he likes to use. We saw some before. It's a small house, but it's interesting, and we'll arrive at pictures from the inside. You see these narrow streets. There are no sidewalks. The Japanese, they control the traffic in their own ways, but I like these narrow streets. It's almost like you are in a village, or you are in Tokyo. I mean, the house is actually not so small as I thought it was. I forgot how its plan was, but it's very busy inside because of those powerful structural trees, as I call them. A lot of doors are sliding, so it's hard to see where the entrance into the house is. Now look at this. Surprise, surprise. Who would do something like this in the middle of a room? But it's a totemic presence. It's powerful. It's, in my opinion, is inspiring. I find it. I find that the house is protected because of this powerful concrete element in the center of the house. It's enigmatic also. Now, of course, it's very easy to complain. If I want to go from this place to the other place, what do? I risk hitting my head on this thing, or I jump over it. Yes, exactly so. So what? Why can't you lower yourself? Why can't you assume the immense discomfort of lowering yourself or jumping over this thing? In both cases, you make a little bit of exercise. What's wrong with that? So in discomfort, there are also seeds for something positive, I would say. Look here, you know, it's most functional is to tremble, would say, no way, you know, this is too narrow, the angle of the ladder is unacceptable. What if I am to bring a piano upstairs? Why should you bring a piano upstairs? For God's sake, or buy a small electronic piano, Yamaha, or I don't know. I mean, I truly find the functionalist way of thinking about architecture ridiculous most of the time. Really, it's so predictable and you know, lacking a poetical horizon. It's just architecture is more than that. It should be more than that. And you know, functionalism reduces everything to rubble. Here again, we will say, wait a minute, this is not well designed because this is, you know, diagonal, and this is, you know, rectangular, and, you know, they don't, this could be aggressive. I could hit myself in this, which is very possible. It's okay. I mean, you know, it's okay. Life has dangers too. But when I look, this is just a detail of the houses, you know, in terms of space. It's a small space, but it's interesting, it's engaging. There are things happening here. You know, it looks different. And look at this space. You know, and it's not formalism. I don't think Kazuo Shinohara here was a formalist. I mean, form does exist. It does manifest itself. But I feel that behind the form, something else is happening here. I don't know enough about this house in order to properly articulate what I just said. But this is my intuition, that it's not just because it is surprising. It is a surprising building, and a surprising room or space that we look at here. And yes, now that we saw pictures from the inside and we look at the picture from the outside, we see the relationship. These are some kind of, not oblongs, I don't know how to call it. They open, these triangular parts, they could open, and then there is glass behind them. So that's why in the previous picture here we see, you know, glass in both cases. You see them open here. Now, I don't know this. I'm a little bit confused. This was at an earlier stage of the construction of the building. But whatever, it does look impressive, although it's a small house. It might not be the most sustainable house. Yes, he didn't need, you know, this emphatic concrete structure. If he wanted to save money, he would have done it differently. He was searching for something, you know, a certain expression, and maybe even a certain architectonic mythology. I don't know, but it's interesting, you know. I think it gives an identity to the place that the people who live here could benefit from. Kazuo Shinohara. Another house from 1977, this one different from the previous one. Imagine this is during the construction or something, unless it was abandoned or deserted. We remember what we read at the beginning, that his architecture is lucid, or is about lucidity and ephemerality. And this aspect of ephemerality, I think, is very important in the Japanese culture. Maybe that's why they have such incredible longevity. Exactly because somehow, paradoxically, they assume ephemerality or the transitoriness of life. I read that the Japanese don't value their lives so much. And paradoxically, again, they have long lives, you know, because they are confronted with tsunamis, with tornadoes, with, you know, earthquakes and so on. So I imagine living in Japan, you are confronted with your own vulnerability. But exactly because of it, you become enduring, you become strong. Do you hear the Japanese, you know, complaining or, you know, lamenting? I know when in 2011, there was that incredible tsunami and earthquake and even the nuclear tragic event, and they had great losses, you know, in terms of number of people who died and people who disappeared, and economically. In that year, 2011, Japan was to donate 1 million, I don't know, dollars, euros, I don't know exactly what, to the International Theatre Festival in Sibiu. They committed to this earlier in some previous year. And I was sure that they would not honor that their commitment because of the tragic events that took place in Japan. No, they did. They did even then. You know, it's this very high level of commitment to a cause, which I think is splendid. Anyway, there is a lot to learn, I think, from the Japanese. And their collectiveness, you know, it's this, they belong to each other. It's a they are very strong because of this. Mysterious images, no, because now you don't see the typical furnishings and so on. It's rather abstract spaces. House under high voltage lines, 1981, Kazuo Shinohara. So here is another kind of umbrella, you know, protecting from the high voltage lines. These houses deserve attention and analysis, which I'm not able to because I didn't analyze them sufficiently. But I hope I stir up those of you who are here to investigate, because I think there is, and I think and I know, because I know in the Japan Architect, the important architecture magazine, when they published such houses, there was often, if not always, also a philosophical statement from the architect explaining the so-called concept. You know, that these Japanese, like Kazuo Shinohara and others like him, are not vulgar architects. They are highly trained, highly cultured, sensitive, philosophical, poetical. They do not build just, you know, like most of us do. They configure a certain constructive gesture in accordance with metaphysical concerns. They are very, very interesting. Like even the name, high house under the high voltage lines. In Europe, probably no one would have called the house in this way. There is a high level of artificiality, and we are going to see other examples where this artificiality is, but maybe artificiality from the point of view of a Westerner or European, because I read that Ishigami, another Japanese architect, a contemporary architect, his conception of nature is different from the one an European has. House in Yokohama, 1985. This one is also interesting, more in a way spectacular because of certain elements. Gun is the sloping roof. Here we see the penetration of this prism by a cylinder. He's playful with the various forms. You see this little square window, this half a circle window, a triangular window. Now, look at these steps. But I guess you exit from the house, but look even at the door, how it is. And then you arrive at these steps. There are no handrails and there is no balcony. I guess you just open this door and you sit here and you contemplate the landscape and you pray you are not going to fall, or if you have a vertigo, you could fall. Or is it incomplete? But these dysfunctional parts of the house create room for unexpected events. Yes, some could be unfortunate. Let's say you fall, or I don't know, but I think there is some truth in what Friedrich Nietzsche said when he said, live dangerously. Unfortunately, architects are taught to fight danger and to create a haven of protection, what Rem Koolhaas called the paraphernalia of protection. We protect, we protect, we protect. But sometimes, at least, this excessive obsession with protection takes something away from life as lived. So I wonder, what did Kazuo Shinohara, what did he want to do here with this? Because it's very unusual, really. These 3 steps which lead to nowhere, unless you want to jump from here to the, which is possible, and then enter the house from somewhere else. Or why did he do it like this? I have no idea. I mean, this is what this was a professor at the Tokyo Institute of Technology, I think. That's the university where he taught. So he was a highly trained architect. Why would he do this? What do these steps symbolize, and what do they actually function for? And look at the interior of the house. It's very like a stage design. It's almost surrealistic. Look at these steps here, totally indifferent to Neufer, and look at the opening in the wall. You know, this is not a door as we normally would think of a door. Everything is unusual. But I like it, you know. I mean, why not accept even, you know, threads and risers like for a stair like this? Why not? You probably know that at Biennale in Venezia some years ago, Switzerland created their pavilion, modifying the expected dimensions of the interior of a house. You know, like the counter of the kitchen was very high, like, I don't know, 1.5 meters or something like this, if not taller. And something magical happens, because when you are not dealing with the expected dimensions, yes, you are confronted with a certain discomfort, but that discomfort has also a beneficial side to it. That it's like you are a child, like discovering the world, and sometimes painfully, sometimes joyously. I mean, you look at this, you would say, this is not a house. It is a house. Look at this door, it opens. You can jump from here inside, plus the door is very narrow, as you can see. Why not? I mean, this kind of house promotes something else, a different kind of life. You know, it's like you find this architectural object, if I am to call it so, which was meant for a certain function that I know nothing about, and I try to accommodate myself to that function. And I don't know, the result could be unexpected and interesting. Maybe a house could also be a medium towards self-discovery. So in your even conflict with the house, through the unexpectedness that the house provokes you with, you discover something about yourself. We are not accustomed to this way of thinking, because we are really prisoners of a very conventional way of thinking about what a building is and should be. Now we arrive at the phenomenal Ukiyo-e art movement in Japan. What is Ukiyo-e? Ukiyo-e means the floating world. And maybe you know, in the 19th century, well, starting from the 18th century until approximately the mid 19th century, but it continued to this day, but its golden age was approximately between mid 18th century to mid 19th century. It was the formidable, beautiful, fragile art called ukiyo-e, the woodcuts, the famous Japanese woodcuts. And they had unbelievable artists, truly great artists, sometimes who changed their names 15 times in a lifetime, like Hokusai. Yes, for them, they didn't have this stubborn obsession with the signature, you know, like we have today, like even Tadao Ando has, who is Japanese. And I'm saying this because I was very disappointed when I saw an exhibition retrospective with the works of Tadao Ando, where on a huge wall inside the museum at the entrance, in the center of the wall, there was a sketch by him about 20-30 centimeters by 20-30 centimeters. The wall was huge and wide, and he signed it twice, on the left bottom corner and on the right bottom corner. He didn't need to sign it. It was his retrospective. Everybody knew that was the Tadao Ando show. Why did he sign it twice? Plus, no one would have taken the wall with him or her. So, you know, this is a different time, but Ukiyo-e, the floating world, the beautiful, fragile world of woodcuts, of those incredible artists between mid-18th century and mid-19th century, had a different conception. They didn't care about the signature. As I said, they changed their names. Like I know in the case of Hokusai, he changed his name 15 times, you know, and I remember in a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful film by Akira Kurosawa, The Bodyguard, begins the movie with a samurai who finds himself at an intersection, at crossroads, and he didn't know where to go. And anyway, he throws something in the air. He lets fate decide for him where to go. But what I want to say actually is that at one moment he's asked, "What is your name?" Someone asks him, "What is your name?" And he looks through the window and he sees a beautiful, well, distant field with flowers. And he said, "My name is the field with this," and he named the flowers. He named himself with the name of that field of flowers that he saw through the window at that moment. If he would have been asked about his name, you know, in a different circumstance, he most surely would have invented a different name. It's something, in my opinion, very beautiful about this. But let's come back to this. Kazuo Shinohara built a museum for Ukiyo-e, which is the art of the Japanese woodcuts. And it was a magnificent, those very, very modest and fragile art. Maybe you know, the Europeans discovered this art of the woodcuts, the Japanese woodcuts, accidentally. From what I read, apparently the mid-19th century, or in the second half of the 19th century, important sensitive artists like the Impressionists, or you know, other artists like Van Gogh, Monet, Degas, they discovered an art they knew nothing about. And how did they discover it? When they had a little bit of money, they bought fish from the market that came from Japan, and the fish was wrapped in woodcuts, in Japanese woodcuts. Because, I mean, if you can imagine something like this, let's say you buy a fish and it came wrapped in a beautiful woodcut by Utamaro. I mean, and the European artist said, "Wow, this is a beautiful art." And that's how, you know, slowly Europe became interested in this art, which in a way in Japan was not considered an art in an European sense. For example, the great Ukiyo-e woodcut artists, they would hang the artworks from the branches of the trees or from the frames of the windows or doors. And you know, sometimes these woodcuts arrived in Europe, you know, protecting fish. A very different conception about art, but within this very different conception, the frontier between life and art was diminished, if not, you know, destroyed or banished. But let's look at, you know, talking about ephemerality. And I think there is something to learn about the ephemeral, what is transitory. there are great virtues in this art of Japan. Maybe you also know that Frank Lloyd Wright was in love with this art, with the Japanese woodcuts. He had a great collection. It's true, he spent 2 years in Japan. Frank Lloyd Wright didn't admire too many cultures, and he certainly didn't admire the European Renaissance, but he loved this particular art, Ukiyo-e, the floating world, and he loved the Japanese woodcuts, and he loved in general the Japanese culture. And he had a great collection of woodcuts, and from what I read, sometimes when he didn't have money, he would pay his employees with the woodcuts. He also lost a lot of woodcuts in a fire, a second tragic fire that happened at his studio in Wisconsin. Anyway, this is the Ukiyo-e museum. I should have had here also the museum that Kazuo Sejima built for Hokusai, since I mentioned Hokusai. But we look now at this museum built by Kazuo Shinohara for this particular form of art, which is distinctively Japanese. It belongs to them. We see here the capriciousness of the aesthetical decisions, the playfulness. And this playfulness, I think, is again, I don't think it can be separated from creativity. Even here, I find this detail very interesting. It's unsettling. It's a little bit, yes, unsettling, but in essence, I think it provokes this feeling of things not being, crystallized forever. There is the same spirit exists within the woodcuts of the Ukiyo-e art. I myself love Ukiyo-e art, and I have several books, and I'm always astonished at the beauty, the attention to detail and the fragility. These woodcuts were printed on mulberry paper, and a very, complex process, because for each color you had to print a different wood block and superimpose them on the paper, and you couldn't create a lot of woodcuts. You were limited to a certain number, so it was a very time-consuming and labor-consuming effort. This is actually a picture with a fragment of a woodcut by Hokusai with Mount Fuji and so on. And whoever did this, I didn't do this, but so it's the building of Kazuo Shinohara with, enlarged fragment of a woodcut by Hokusai. I love Hokusai. Hokusai was this magical artist. He achieved success. He had a lot of success, but I read that at 50, he was already 50 years old. He had a lot of success. He changed his name a few times, but at 50, he said, I am beginning to learn the ABC of my profession, of my job, of my art. At 60, now it's true, he lived a long life. At 60, he said, I'm making a little bit of a progress. At 70, he said, I'm moving forward. At 80, he said, I feel I am getting there. And I think he lived until 90 or a little bit over 90. At 90, he said, yes, I'm very close. Isn't it beautiful? I mean, an accomplished artist, childlike at 50, states that he's just beginning. I find this very beautiful. Playfulness, again, this is what creativity is about. Playfulness, not morose so-called seriousness. No, You see here, I don't know, either reflected or seen through, you know, a little bit of a woodcut. I hope I have other images. I don't know exactly why he contorted here the glass on the facade. Maybe there is a reason, maybe there isn't a reason, I don't know. The Japan Ukiyo-e Museum, here you have the artworks themselves are small in size. I had a few myself, actually. I have somewhere some of them. I love the ukiyo-e. I love this spirit, you know, where the human being is not, you know, on a pedestal proclaiming, here I am, anthropos, you know, the man, the measure of all things. No, ukiyo-e is about fragility. And ukiyo-e is about also, this is an interesting aspect, that this art flourished. Please be kind and turn off the microphone. I hear a background noise. Thank you, unless you want to say something. You know, this art flourished in an introverted Japan, because until mid 19th century, Japan was closed off towards the outside, was really an introverted society living kind of in a medieval way. And within that introversion, developed this highly personal and beautiful art form. I wish I had here some pictures. Maybe next time I'll show pictures of Japanese woodcuts. But you can find that on the web, and I'm sure you know them already, some of them. Tokyo Institute of Technology, Centennial Hall, 1987. Look at this. The same spirit. This you know, crystallized building, geometrically well configured, seriously structured and built. It's also unsettling, playful. Unsettlingly, I don't think there is such a word, but you understand. It is unexpected exactly because of its you know, playfulness. Is it formalistic? Well, some people could say that it is. I personally don't think so. It's not the same kind of formalism that we are accustomed to when we judge, you know, architecture in Europe. It's something else. Um, all in all, it is a striking building. The plan is very simple. And yet, when you look at it, it's not so simple. And it's, you know, it functions, of course, very well, but it's also unusual. Yes, here there is comfort, as you can see, no sloping land through the building. Kazuo Shinohara. You know, sometimes I joke, I say, we are the extraterrestrials, we, the human beings, and I do believe we are, yes. As, you know, maybe Heidegger would have said, we were thrown on the earth from somewhere. That's why the child cries when the child emerges from the womb of the mother. Why does the child cry? Because of the otherness of the environment. We are probably the extraterrestrials, we the humans. Anyway, interesting building, and it's really about you know, the otherness of life that often we run away from. Yes, it's a metallic building, it's a techno building, but there is this playfulness which humanizes it, I think. I wish I knew Japanese. I don't, but I look at the pictures and I mean, look at this staircase here, you know, exterior staircase. And it's, of course, it's executed impeccably. I mean, in terms of construction, you look at this, it's impeccably done. But, you know, reflecting on the woodcuts, there you will see in the most, you know, a small square or a small rectangle, you see the face of a woman with a hair, and the artist carved that hair. You know, it almost shows every piece of hair. I mean, the meticulousness is unbelievable, but also the grace. Ukiyo-e art is a very, very, very graceful art. I guess what the Japanese teach us is this: whatever you do it best. Do it at your best. I'm at very your best, at your very best. And that's what I see. It's impeccably done, you know, every single detail. They don't try to, maybe because of the condition, you know, the Japanese exceptionalism is probably derives probably from the fact that, you know, it's the country, is the land the closest to the sunrise, and, you know, beyond them is the ocean. And, you know, they know that that place is all they have. They cannot play games with it, so they have to take care of every square inch, of every square centimeter, of every square millimeter, and they do. Kumamoto police station. Now this one is a little bit emphatic, 1990, but then Jean Nouvel also created in Belgium police headquarters, even more emphatic than this one, much more emphatic and phallic. I don't think that's what the police headquarters really need. I don't know. This is not one of my preferred buildings of Kazuo Shinohara, but he did it. Although on the other hand, you could say that he sabotaged the, you know, the inherent force of the police by creating a small base. So thus, implicitly, the meaning could refer to a certain instability or fragility. I don't. I'm trying to you know, find virtues in a building which otherwise could be read differently. A building in Osaka, 1990. We know by now that he liked to play with the diagonals. I imagine they do have some role here, not just ornamental, but also structural. Kazuo Shinohara. That's it. So let's wish him happy birthday, and I thank you for being here today.